Whatto chaps, I'm MagicalMike. You might have noticed that there's been a huge lack of Guild Wars 2 content on the channel this year, and I've been putting off talking about it now for a long time. After I lost my patience with Heartthorn's poor implementation at the end of 2015 and did that hour-long video that was... jeez. I stopped playing Guild Wars 2 while I waited for some new content or for some fixes to those features, and fixes did eventually come after a ton of problems that I had with Heartthorn's. Fractals got vastly improved, adventures became more accessible, the maps became easier to explore, rewards got updated, and dailies improved as well. However, having already been through all of that content, and finding it pretty average at the time, none of those spring updates actually interested me or made me want to re-log into the game regularly again. There was nothing new for me to do, no goals for me to work towards, so I waited. And that was the time of the great content drought, from hot launching in October 2015 all the way to the end of July 2016. There was nothing new to do unless you were a raider, which I'm not. Then Out of the Shadows launched at the end of July, bringing the living world, which I really dislike that term, back to the game. Now, back in Season 2 I covered all of the updates on this channel in, I would say, reasonable detail, because they were frequent enough to where I was regularly playing the game, still interested and invested in that content, and I had stuff to talk about. After an 8-month period of not logging in, I was cautious about how the new content would be. I've played all of the story patches so far and am often disappointed with the quality of various aspects. Usually the characters or the pacing is wonky, and I ended up complaining way too much about the previous season. So I waited. I played Out of the Shadows. I thought it was a strong start to the season with the new map, Bloodstone Fen, new mechanics, better story and so on, but I didn't want to renew my faith in the game and start singing its praises just yet, because it could have just been a one-off. So again, I waited for the next couple of releases, Rising Flames and A Crack in the Ice. I found that all of these patches so far suffer from problems that just keep me from wanting to dedicate detailed videos to them. The thing is, I just don't care about Guild Wars 2 the way I used to. I find it impossible to genuinely dedicate so much time to talking about the game when there's just nothing to keep me playing it. I find it incredibly boring to produce content on and stretch out the already low value of each of these episodes when they're so lacking. These episodes are fun to play on release, but they don't really give you any reason to stay in-game beyond that first story night. So you get 4 or 5 hours out of it, sure, but then, well, there's nothing really of value to keep in the maps for. And I realise that's kind of unfair to complain about 4 or 5 hours of free content, but this is an MMO and we have different expectations of MMO content. MMO content is supposed to keep you playing daily, it's supposed to keep you in the game, otherwise there's no reason to keep doing so, and I think this is a problem that Guild Wars 2 suffers. I realised this a long time ago, but almost nothing in Guild Wars 2 is fun to repeatedly play. Most of the reason to play content in the game is to farm gold for some kind of item or eventual goal, or to experience the new content. In the end, if you don't need to farm anything, or you don't want any of the rewards for playing that particular content, it doesn't keep me or a lot of other people interested. I have no reason to play these living world patches beyond the first few hours. And grinding is a tool that's used in many games to keep its player base active, but there's usually some kind of strong incentive for people to actually put up with it. For those of us in Guild Wars 2 that already have the items that we want, the armour, the weapons we want, the skins we want, there's really not much reason to force ourselves through that experience to get, say, a new Ascended Trinket that does nothing different than what our current Ascended Trinkets do. So the new maps added with each of these episodes fail to really offer any sort of reason to stick around in them, unless you want to grind there for something specific, and for me that really doesn't give me anything to grind for. This results in a pretty short lifespan for those maps, and then players abandon those maps for something else in the next new release, as we've seen with Bloodstone Fen, and to a lesser degree Ember Bay. Another major problem I have is that I can take every generic build to any area and apply that same playstyle to every single situation. Every build feels the same, every profession feels pretty much the same nowadays, Every situation, encounter, enemy, location, it all kind of blends together and means I don't really need to strategize or learn anything in this RPG. And I love role-playing games. It's easily my favourite genre in gaming. I love working out builds to counter certain things, or new strategies to work around my character's weaknesses. I find it fascinating to come up with builds in the original game, based around a skill or an idea, but in Guild Wars 2 I don't really have that freedom because every enemy can be beaten easily and it takes a huge amount of time and gold to set up a completely new build. You run the same build and same skills in every zone, you join zergs and you endlessly kill giant health sponges. None of it feels unique. Guild Wars 2 to me, as a massively multiplayer online role-playing game, fails at being a role-playing game. I play a character that never changes, never grows or progresses in any way, and that is the least rewarding feeling I've ever had in a game. Whereas the original game, Guild Wars 1, still holds value in this regard. Despite me beating everything, having gold walking amongst mere mortals, and having every item I ever wanted, I can still, to this day, pick a profession, pick an elite skill or an attribute, and build something completely new around it. I can, for example, make an elementalist that uses a spear and earth magic to buff allies and go test it in various areas and situations, and if it works, or if it's fun, I can add that playstyle to my character's list of builds. My characters grow every time I try something new with them. There's progression there. It's hidden, but it's there, it's definitely there, and it's tangible. But alas, once again I've managed to ramble on for ages and barely stay on topic. Really, I just wanted to try and explain why Guild Wars 2 didn't really hold my attention anymore, why there's not really any content for it on the channel at this point, and how I compare it to other RPGs. Guild Wars 2 has an admittedly large amount of content, but it's consumable content. And for me as a veteran player, and for many other people, well, we've consumed all of it. Thanks for watching, and maybe I'll do a follow-up at some point and try and explain in greater detail about why I feel this way. But we'll see. Cheers.